Mitsue stared at Flynn. Like the others, she wore a kindler's uniform, though unlike the rest, hers had a small white flame above the right shoulder, which denoted her rank, lieutenant colonel. Her eyes were a dark brown, almost black, an icy derision emanating from the core like frostbitten winds in the mountains of a night. She could command. Mitsue saw that. Powerful, savage, unrelenting. But it wasn't their hearts that she governed. She was a master of fear, of intimidation. Her face drawn, anemic, sharp, not an ounce of spare flesh there. Wells of shadow beneath her eyes as if she hadn't slept in days. Eyebrows so thin they could cut. A brittle woman, like glass, the type to shatter before bending, and she looked close enough to it. Down her shoulders trailed a wash of smoke-black hair, black as if long ago she'd banished all color from it, all color and all dimension, black that seemed not to be touched by the light, not to absorb, not to reflect. She was in her element now, here in the center of the storm. No, Mitsue realized, watching her, that wasn't right. She is the storm. She glanced back at Mitsue, and the ferocity of the look made his heart quell. Still, he needed to find Ray. Please, I was with 3 other children from St. Trinit's, one a girl my age. Her name is Ray, and Clyde! I'm going. Clyde had caught his sleeve on a light fixture, and it took a moment to extricate himself. Please, you have to listen, Mitsue began. No, you listen, Flynn said, turning back, her words slow and scorching. Out there, my soldiers are dying in ways you couldn't even imagine. Ripped open, eaten, their blood running into the cobblestone, alone. No one to see them as the darkness takes them. And you want me to listen to you, a child? Her laugh was bright and scornful. I have no time for you. My subordinates have no time for you. I'm sparing Clyde not to aid you, but only to make you leave. Do you get it? Now get out of my sight. She stalked back down the aisle. Merritt, Donnelly, with me, she barked. And flanked by the other 2 kindlers, she left the room. Mitsue watched her go. He wanted to call after her, but Clyde had finally managed to cross the room, and he lay his hand on Mitsue's shoulder. Easy does it, he said. Let her be. Besides, I know where your friends are. Clyde led Mitsue through a series of hallways full of paintings and tables and stone busts and maps and mounted skulls and hides, where doors led off from either side, speaking as he went. Sorry about the lieutenant colonel, he said. She means well. It's just things aren't looking good. We've lost 2 entire companies. The rest are in tatters. If this keeps up, we'll all be dead before morning. He glanced sideways at Mitsue. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But you're kindlers, Mitsue said. Even to his own ears, his voice sounded childish. But how could they be losing? Kindlers, the invincible soldiers that had ravaged his country, masters of fire, able to demolish a building with a wave of their hands. Clyde laughed. We're kindlers, sure. He glanced down at Mitsue. Look, kid, before tonight the most I'd ever seen of a nocturne was a sketch in a book. I'd hardly say that prepared me for the real thing. He grimaced. Mitsue's mind turned back to the darkness flowing upward out of the solid stone floor, the amorphous bodies, the reaching hands, the gaping mouths. In his memory he heard the snap of an orphan's spine broken 10 feet in the air, a shower of ruby blood splattering the walls. No, Mitsue realized. Nothing could prepare you. That's not to say we don't know what we're doing, Clyde continued. The lieutenant colonel's the very best. If anyone can get us through this, it's her. He believed it. Mitsue could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. They turned left down another hallway. You're lucky Marcus's group found you when they did, Clyde continued. The evacuation isn't going well. We got back to the city too late. Back from where? Mitsue asked. Training exercise a couple of miles south. It was cold as hell in the snow. We heard the bells from there. Lieutenant Colonel Flynn had us back in the trucks double time. We rolled in and set up temporary HQ here in this bastard's mansion. He shook his head. Bad luck, isn't it? Tonight of all nights. Still, morning isn't far off. We might make it yet. What happens then? Mitsue asked. According to my old textbook, they leave. But then someone had drawn a big veiny dick in the margin, so take that with a whole handful of salt. He gave a half smile and gestured to a door on the right. This one. Mitsue's heart fluttered. This is it. He grasped the handle, the iron icy against his feverish skin. He tried to open it, but Clyde held it close. Listen, kid, he said, dropping his voice. I should have told you. He ran a hand through his hair. The ones you came in with, they weren't looking so hot. What do you mean? Mitsue asked tremulously. He tried to open the door again, but Clyde continued to hold it closed. I only got a glimpse, but... Shit, I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry. He scratched the back of his head. Mitsue could feel it, rounding the corners of his heart, flooding the canals of his veins, drowning him from the inside. Fear. He wanted to disappear, to get back in bed, to never get up. He wanted to be someone else, with someone else's problems. Time stood still. He knew that if he never opened the door, he'd never have to know. He'd never have to face it, the truth. It was a child's logic, but there it was. Ray. But then he had to know. Please, he said. Yeah, of course. Clyde stepped aside. I thought you should hear from someone first. He looked at Mitsue with sympathy staining his eyes. Listen. He paused as if searching for the right words, stepping side to side on his feet. He blew a quick blast of air from his lips and shrugged. I'm sorry, he said. Good luck. Unable to muster any gentler consolation, he turned and walked back the way they'd come, glancing back only once. Mitsue watched him go. When Clyde had vanished around the corner at the end of the hall, he paused a moment and shuttered his eyes closed and open and took a deep breath. Then, as if plunging into a great depth of water, he twisted the handle and stepped inside.